Former Democratic Congressman Dennis Kucinich and former Navy SEAL Carl Higbie. All right, Carl, I want to start with you. Do you think we should actually see more of these bombs, more of these Moab-type bombs dropped like we saw last week?
Well, definitely at this level of force, Charles. I don't know if we're going to see any more Moabs because, quite frankly, I don't think they have any more in the country right now. But we will see increased level of explosives like this because, look, this was one of Donald Trump's campaign promises. Like, I'm going to bomb the hell out of ISIS. And he is, because that's what works. Diplomacy hasn't worked. Pulling out of there and apologizing hasn't worked. This is the only thing that seems to make it.
Congressman, you seem to have some misgivings, though, about all of this.
Well, first of all, there is no military solution. And if you want to get rid of ISIS, dry up their funds. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, and other nations, including the U.S. Covertly, have helped ISIS. Let's dry up their funds, and then they're vulnerable. Until then, they're not. So we have to realize that we have to look for diplomatic solutions. A military solution at this point is unlikely. However, ISIS needs to be put in check. Here, just 2 days ago, they bombed a convoy in Syria and killed 80 children.
Right.
So, we definitely have a problem with them. But part of the problem is maybe we should cut off their funds. That's what Tulsi Gabbard and Rand Paul want to do.
Congressman, what about a combination? I mean, when you start to drop these bombs and you put pressure on them militarily, doesn't that open up diplomatic pressure even more?
Well, at this point, I would question that. I have a couple different questions with this. First of all, I don't think the president can delegate this authority to generals, since he doesn't really have the authority to go to war. And while some would say, well, we're already at war in Afghanistan, the contours of this war are dramatically different than what they were back in 2002. Secondly, this idea of letting generals make the decision on dropping these kind of bombs, what's next? Letting generals drop atomic bombs? No. The president has to maintain a tight leash on this so that things don't spiral out of control. Third, the Congress has to definitely get involved in this, as it is its constitutional duty.
Carl, listen, we're talking about ISIS, right? They're not trouble for the world. They're a parasite. They're an unstoppable, killing parasite that I don't think you can negotiate with. I don't think they would understand any form of reason. And it's one of these entities that thrives on power and intimidation, isn't it?
Right, absolutely. And with all due respect to the congressman, I think the fact that he thinks that we need to seek a diplomatic solution to this is just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. These are people who are chopping people's heads off, burning people and dipping them in acid, and you want a diplomatic solution with them? No. These people speak force. That's the only thing that's going to solve this problem. And quite frankly, we tried to cut off their money. Donald Trump campaigned on the fact that we should have taken the oil before they got it. That was their money source. And guess what? We didn't have the backbone to do it. So now we're stuck here, and we have no choice but to use military might.
You misinterpreted what I said. We've got to have a diplomatic solution with Saudi Arabia, with Turkey, with Qatar. They're providing money for ISIS. Dry up their money and we put them out of business.
They're not interested.
Well, look, they have to be interested. Saudi Arabia and Al-Qaeda were involved in 9/11, and we're holding hands with them in this region. Well, we're bombing them. There's something fishy about this whole thing.
Carl?
How do you bring them to the table, though, Congressman?
Look, you stop their funds, period. It's not about we negotiate with them. We understand what they want. They want a caliphate. We shouldn't be helping them out covertly, which, if you look at the intel, that's exactly what has been going on.
With all due respect, some of the funding is in localized prostitution. Some of it's regional shakedown. Some of it will be completely out of our hands. I do agree with you, Congressman, that we probably should investigate banks, particularly European banks that might be actually funneling this money. And you could even argue Saudi Arabia. I mean, and they're building this massive wall because they're afraid of ISIS, so it's a double-edged sword for them as well.
They're funding them.
But what we're talking about, though, is a solution to ultimately get them out of our lives and to rid this scourge from the presence of humanity. And I'm just not sure putting out the olive branch or closing down a few bank accounts will do it.
Charles, you unleash the individual military might of the United States of America. We will kill every single bad guy we can get in contact and our intel sources can find. And that's the only way you're going to do it.
Can you do that strictly from the air, though?
No, you're going to need boots on the ground, which is, unfortunate, but that's the way these wars go now.
So you're saying more American men and women are going to have to die?
Yes, sir.
Oh, wait a minute. Stop, full stop. Get Saudi Arabia out of the game and Turkey out of the game and Qatar out of the game. Stop letting the CEI work this out covertly and helping ISIS and Al-Qaeda and al-Nusra, and we can manage this thing. Right now, to escalate a war and send more of our men and women to die out there, total waste. Total waste. We cannot go in that direction.
Let me add, before you jump in, Carl, Congressman, why do you think all of these parties that you're talking about are are involved in this? Why would they be helping ISIS to this degree?
So there's a desire for a Sunni caliphate. There's a religious motivation underneath all this. And what Saudi Arabia has done is help to inspire Wahhabis and people from 90 different nations. This is an invasion of Syria that's taken place from 90 different nations. So what are we doing here, playing in the flash of a wider war when we need to back off? Donald Trump did not start these wars. It needs to be said. He inherited them. But he obviously is taking advice from people who aren't thinking about Donald Trump's presidency. They're thinking about some other agenda.
You don't believe Assad? Do you believe Assad did that chemical weapons attack?
Well, there's a report out right now we need to look at, and that is a MIT professor raised questions about whether or not the president was deliberately given false information to create the attack. And that false information relied on things like this. Dead canaries with workers right next to the dead canaries at the site. How in the world would the workers not be affected if the canaries are dead? There's there's fishy things going on here, and the president needs to get some advice to look at this so that he doesn't get trapped and we don't get trapped in a bigger war.
Carl, how does the president push for more ground forces? I heard speculation that the NSA, National Security Council, rather, has requested like perhaps 100,000 troops, or at least put it on the drawing board to go into Iraq. But how do we press this in a country that is totally against any more real hand-to-hand conflict where we lose thousands and thousands of our best men and women?
Yeah, very difficult question, Charles. And maybe remind the American people that we lost more troops on the beaches of Normandy than we did in the entire Iraq-Afghanistan war. So I hate to say this, and this sounds harsh, but the American people are going to need to sack up a little bit for this war, because if we don't fight it over there, we're going to fight it on our own shores. Additionally, with this Syria gas attack, if this was by some chance, and I'm not saying 100% that it wasn't, but if it was by some chance not an Assad-backed chemical weapons attack, that's even scarier, because that means that Assad is not in control of his own weapons, and that's something we need to be even more concerned about.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both very much. Appreciate your passion on this.
Thank you. Thanks for your service, Carl.
Coming up, protesters demanding President Trump release his tax